Authorities say an autopsy is inconclusive, but have ruled out foul play in the death of recording artist Sean Levert. Levert was a third of the 1980s R&B trio Levert and the son of the lead singer of the O'Jays, Eddie Levert.
For over 6 decades, Eddie Levert's voice has carried the kind of soul you don't just hear. You feel it. From singing in a small Alabama church to leading the O'Jays through some of the greatest hits in R&B history, he turned pain into poetry and struggle into sound. His music gave hope, healing, and rhythm to generations. But behind that unmistakable voice was a man living through heartbreak few could survive. Eddie didn't just lose fame or fortune, he lost what no parent should ever have to. Now, at 83, the legend who once sang about love and unity faces a quieter battle. What happens when the man who gave the world joy is left standing alone in its echo? This is the tragedy of Eddie Levert, and it's beyond heartbreaking.
When he passed away, there were people who pulled to the side of the road, and there's a bevy of artists who have affected people in the same way, but people who pulled to the side of the road and just broke down in tears.
The forging of a voice. Some voices are shaped by struggle before the world ever hears them. Eddie Levert's story starts just like that, with a mix of grit, hope, and the kind of pain that turns ordinary people into legends. He was born on June 16, 1942, in Bessemer, Alabama, a small town wrapped in red clay and the hum of steel mills. Back then, life was hard. Opportunities were scarce, especially for a young black family in the South. When Eddie was still a boy, his family joined the Great Migration, packing up everything they owned and heading north to Canton, Ohio. They weren't chasing fame. They were chasing a future that felt possible. Canton didn't promise much, but compared to the Jim Crow South, it felt like freedom. It was there, in the heart of Ohio, that Eddie's real journey began. The church became his refuge. Sunday mornings were electric. Voices rising, hands clapping, the floor vibrating beneath the pews. Gospel wasn't just music. It was therapy, release, connection. Eddie found his voice there. It wasn't perfect at first, but it was powerful, full of something raw and real. When he sang, people stopped what they were doing. There was weight in every word, and even at a young age, he carried emotion that felt too big for his years. By high school, Eddie's world started to stretch beyond the church walls. The sound of doo-wop was everywhere. Smooth harmonies, tight rhythms, songs about love and heartbreak. He and a few friends, Walter Williams, William Powell, Bobby Massey, and Bill Iles, began harmonizing in hallways, on street corners, anywhere they could. They called themselves the Triumphs, then the Mascots. But the real transformation came when a Cleveland DJ named Eddie O'Jay took an interest in them. He gave them a name that would stick forever, the O'Jays. At first, success didn't come easy. The 60s were a tough decade for new acts trying to break through. They recorded singles, played small gigs, and tried to make a name for themselves. For a while, it looked like the dream might not happen. The group was tired, broke, and almost ready to give up. But fate had a different plan. In the early 70s, a new sound was rising out of Philadelphia. Lush strings, deep grooves, and lyrics that spoke to real life. Behind it were producers Kenneth Gamble and Leon Huff, the masterminds of Philadelphia soul. They saw something special in the O'Jays, especially in Eddie. His voice wasn't just strong, it was honest. When he sang, it felt like he was telling your story. Gamble and Huff signed the group in 1972, and everything changed overnight. That partnership became magic. The OJs brought soul and sincerity. Gamble and Huff brought vision and structure. Together, they created songs that didn't just top charts. They defined an era. Eddie's voice became the anchor, the heartbeat of those records. And just like that, the kid from Bessemer, Alabama, the one who once sang in a small church to a handful of people, was suddenly leading one of the greatest soul groups in American history. But behind that success, something deeper was building. Fame gave Eddie the world, but it would also test everything he'd ever known. Riding the love train to superstardom. When Eddie Levert and the OJs teamed up with producers Kenneth Gamble and Leon Huff, something clicked that no one could have predicted. It wasn't just talent meeting opportunity, it was chemistry. Gamble and Huff had the golden formula for soul music: lush orchestration, grooves that stuck in your head, and lyrics that actually said something. The OJs brought the emotion, the grit, and Eddie's unmistakable voice. Together, they created lightning in a bottle. Their first album under that partnership, Backstabbers, hit like a shockwave. The title track wasn't just a song, it was a warning. It talked about betrayal and fake friends, wrapped in a beat so smooth you almost missed how sharp the message was. Eddie didn't just sing it, he lived it through every line. You could feel the paranoia, the heartbreak, the edge. The song shot up the charts, and suddenly, the OJs weren't just another group from Ohio. They were global stars. Then came the hits, one after another. In 1973, For the Love of Money dropped, and from the moment that bass line kicked in, everyone knew it was something different. It was funky, bold, and brutally honest. The world was dealing with inflation, layoffs, and a shifting economy. And here was this song holding up a mirror. Eddie's growl carried every ounce of frustration people felt at the time. It wasn't just about greed. It was about what money could do to people. And then there was Love Train. If Backstabbers was about distrust, Love Train was about hope. It was bright, inclusive, and full of optimism. The idea that everyone, no matter where they were from, could come together through music was powerful. Eddie led that message with such conviction that it felt less like a pop song and more like an invitation. Before long, the song climbed to #1, and the OJs became more than just a band. They became a movement. Throughout the 70s, the OJs couldn't miss. They released hit after hit, songs like Now That We Found Love, I Love Music, and Used to Be My Girl. Each one was different, but carried the same unmistakable stamp, that rich Philadelphia sound paired with Eddie's commanding voice. Their concerts became legendary: tight harmonies, sharp choreography, and raw emotion from start to finish. Fans didn't just attend OJ's shows, they experienced them. For Eddie, life finally felt balanced. After years of struggle, he had found success doing what he loved. He had the respect of his peers, a solid career, and a loving family waiting for him at home. He'd built something real, something that mattered. His sons, Gerald and Sean, were growing up watching it all happen. They saw the rehearsals, the recording sessions, the long nights on the road, and they were fascinated. By the time the 80s rolled around, Eddie's legacy was already cemented. But what he didn't know was that his greatest pride as a father would one day become his deepest pain. Because as his sons began to follow in his footsteps, Eddie wasn't just raising the next generation of talent. He was watching history repeat itself in ways he couldn't control. A father's pride, a musical dynasty. By the early 1980s, it was clear that Eddie Levert's legacy wasn't stopping with him. His sons, Gerald and Sean, had that same spark: the voice, the rhythm, the natural pull toward the stage. Growing up around rehearsals, tour buses, and packed shows, they learned how music could move people before they even knew how to spell entertainment. Along with their friend Mark Gordon, they started their own group and kept it simple: Levert. No flashy name, just family. Their sound had that classic soul touch, but with a new groove, something that felt like the next chapter of what their dad started. When Pop, 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 Goes My Mind hit the airwaves, it caught on fast. People couldn't get enough of Gerald's silky tone and the group's smooth harmonies. And then came Casanova. That one changed everything. It was fun, flirty, and pure R&B gold. Suddenly, the Levert boys weren't just Eddie's sons. They were stars in their own right. They were performing on award shows, topping charts, and proving that talent really did run in the family. For Eddie, it was the kind of joy only a father could understand. He wasn't just proud, he was moved. Watching his sons build their own empire in the same world he'd conquered years ago made him feel like life had come full circle. He offered guidance when they asked for it, shared lessons from his own ups and downs, but mostly, he just stood back and watched them shine. Then, in 1992, father and son came together for something special. Baby, Hold On to Me. The song was tender, full of love, and it hit big. Seeing them side by side in the music video, Eddie with that seasoned confidence, Gerald with that smooth charisma, felt like watching the passing of a torch. It was a moment that captured everything the Levert name stood for: soul, connection, and legacy. Everything seemed perfect. The Leverts had carved out a lane of their own, bridging generations and showing the world what family and music could do together. Eddie had done what most dream of. He built something lasting, then watched it bloom through his children. But life has a way of twisting just when it seems most steady. Because not long after that high, the Levert family would face a kind of pain no fame or legacy could prepare them for. The first unthinkable loss. November 10th, 2006. That was the day everything changed for Eddie Levert. His son, Gerald, the voice that had carried R&B through the 80s and 90s, was gone. He was only 40 years old. The news hit like a wave that wouldn't stop crashing. Fans across the world were heartbroken. But for Eddie, it wasn't about fame or music anymore. He'd lost his child. No father is ever ready for that. Gerald's passing was ruled an accidental overdose. Prescription medicine meant to ease his pain ended up silencing him. It felt cruel. A man who had given so much joy was taken by something so ordinary. Eddie tried to keep moving, but the world felt heavier. Every performance, every song, carried the weight of absence. Just before Gerald's death, they had finished a book together called I Got Your Back. It was meant to celebrate their bond as father and son. Now, the title hurts to even say out loud. Eddie had to promote it alone, talking about love and legacy while still trying to understand why his son wasn't here anymore. The grief didn't fade. It just shifted, finding new corners to hide in. And just when it seemed like Eddie and his family were learning how to live with the loss, life dealt another blow, one that would reopen every wound and test the limits of what a heart could bear. The avoidable tragedy. It was March 2008, less than 2 years after losing Gerald, when tragedy struck again. This time, It was Sean, Eddie's younger son. He was only 39 years old. If Gerald's death had been heartbreaking, Sean's was something else entirely. A tragedy that felt senseless, avoidable, and unfair. Sean had been sentenced to jail for not keeping up with child support payments. It was supposed to be a short sentence. 6 days. Just 6 days. But during that time, everything went wrong. Sean had long struggled with high blood pressure and anxiety. He needed medication to keep them under control. His family later said he was denied that medication in jail. Without it, his condition started to spiral. He became disoriented, started hallucinating, and his body began to fail him. By the time he was taken to the hospital, it was too late. The official report listed the cause of death as complications from sarcoidosis, a condition that affects the lungs. But to his family, that explanation felt hollow. They believed the system had failed him, plain and simple. Sean didn't have to die. For Eddie, it was unimaginable. Losing one son had nearly broken him. Losing two, both under such painful circumstances, felt impossible to survive. The family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the county, and years later, they received a settlement of $4 million. But no amount of money could make sense of what had happened. No settlement could ease the ache of losing both of his boys. Eddie was still performing during those years, still trying to stand tall in front of an audience that had loved him for decades. But behind the microphone was a man carrying 2 lifetimes of grief. Every song, every lyric about love or heartbreak now carried a different kind of weight. But how does a man keep singing when life keeps taking everything away? The weight of grief and time. They say the body keeps score, and for Eddie Levert, that felt painfully true. Decades of carrying loss had left invisible marks that time only deepened. By the time he reached his 70s and 80s, the energy that once powered his voice and stage presence had begun to collide with the quiet exhaustion of grief. He could still light up a room with his smile, still command an audience. But behind all that strength was a man who had seen and endured more than most ever will. Then came COVID. The first infection hit him hard. It wasn't just about the fever or the fatigue. It went after his voice, the one thing that had always defined him. His baritone, once rich and commanding, weakened to the point where singing felt like climbing a mountain. For someone who had spent his entire life communicating through music, that was terrifying. Imagine being known for a gift that suddenly feels like it's slipping through your fingers. Eddie went through months of therapy to get his voice back. Breathing exercises, vocal training, everything. It was slow and frustrating, but he refused to stop trying. Music was still his anchor, his way of connecting to the world and to the people he'd lost. And just when it looked like he was finally recovering, the virus came back. In 2022, during the O'Jays farewell tour, Eddie was hospitalized with COVID pneumonia. It was serious. He needed oxygen support and time to heal. The tour was postponed, and fans everywhere held their breath, sending messages and prayers. When he eventually pulled through, he said that love from his fans was his medicine. He meant it. At that stage of life, every bit of care, every message of support mattered. But survival came with reflection. Eddie knew time was catching up with him. He spoke more openly about his health, his faith, and his gratitude. The man who had once defined himself by energy and movement was now learning to appreciate stillness. Even as he fought to keep performing, there was an awareness that his journey was shifting. He wasn't the unstoppable force of his youth anymore. He was human, vulnerable, and after so much loss, still finding ways to keep going. Then, just as it seemed he'd finally found a fragile peace, fate intervened again. And this time, the blow would come from where he least expected it. A quiet warrior's final battle. In Eddie Levert's long and complicated life, his daughter Ryan was a quiet kind of light. Born in 2002 to him and his wife, Raquel Capleton, she came much later in his life, a little burst of hope after years marked by grief. Unlike her brothers, who had grown up under stage lights and magazine covers, Ryan was raised far from that kind of spotlight. Her world was family, laughter, and the kind of love that's calm and constant. She wasn't chasing fame. She was just living, finishing school, spending time with her family, and being the steady joy in her father's later years. Eddie often talked about how she grounded him. After losing Gerald and Sean, she gave him a reason to keep showing up, to keep smiling. Then, quietly and heartbreakingly, came news that would once again change everything. In late 2024, family tributes began to appear online. Posts filled with disbelief, love, and sorrow. Ryan Levert had passed away at just 22. She had been privately battling lupus, an unpredictable chronic illness that affects the immune system. Few outside her close circle knew the full extent of her struggle. Her family called her a quiet warrior, and that phrase stayed with everyone who knew her story. Her cousin, Carlicia, wrote, "I have no words. I love you so much, Ryan. You were a beautiful, quiet warrior, and I'm so sorry this was your fate." It captured everything: her grace, her courage, and the quiet dignity with which she faced her illness. For Eddie, now 83, this loss was something words could never really touch. He had outlived all three of his children, Gerald, Sean, and now Ryan. Each loss had taken a piece of him, but this one, the final one, left an emptiness that went beyond sorrow. He once said that a parent's greatest prayer is to never bury their child. For him, that prayer had been denied 3 times. And yet, even in all that pain, Eddie's legacy still speaks of love, resilience, and the strange, stubborn beauty of carrying on. His voice, the one that gave the world Love Train and For the Love of Money, still carries that spark. The one that says, no matter how hard it gets, there's still music left to make. If this story moved you, take a moment to honor the legends who shaped the soundtrack of our lives. Hit that like button, subscribe for more untold stories from the icons who lived them, and check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'd discover next about your favorites.